sooner I'll also be taking up visits to Ahmedabad, Lucknow and Guwahati. This exercise is primarily aimed at taking the budget basically to all the cities, meeting with the industry leaders, trade bodies, chartered accountants, tax consultants, any economists who have anything to discuss and ask us about. We've made it a session where we are explaining a lot of things about the budget, answering questions and giving clarifications, and also further understanding if industry or business leaders wanted to have any additions which they wanted to give as suggestions. So that's the background. I won't get into too much of a detail. It might be better that I leave the floor open and for you all to ask me and the team any questions and clarifications that you might want to have. Thank you. So that we'll know what is the position which the department wants to take on the matter. So, post the court's latest verdict on it, it will only be proper for us to wait and hear from the department concerned.
Ma'am, I have two questions, ma'am. I'm Rachel from the Times of India. My first question is, given Anil Ambani has declared his net worth as zero, does his 680 million loan due to Chinese lenders represent a conflict of interest with Rafael? And would this compromise our national interest with regard to China? And my second question is, RBI has now included...
1 minute, ma'am, 1 minute. Would you please read that question all over again?
No, ma'am. I asked, does his 680 million loan due to Chinese lenders, what he owes the Chinese lenders, does it represent a conflict of interest with regard to the Rafael deal? And my second question is...
No, hold on for your first one. I'm absorbing the question that you've brought in.
So does this compromise our national interest, ma'am, given that he has such a huge loan, his net worth is zero, and he is now building one of India's defense jets?
I would leave that question to be determined wherever, whichever court he's gone and claimed, rather than me commenting on it. So that's your first question. Now the second.
Ma'am, RBI has now included NPR as KYC document for banks. Is there any plan to make it mandatory, like UIDAI has tried to make Aadhaar mandatory for bank account holders?
What are your question relates that NPR has been made mandatory by banks. Is that the question? What? No, that the KYC document exists as it was. It hasn't changed. There are some fields which are optional, there are some fields which are mandatory. So it remains the same. There is no other column which is newly added.
Madam, you're open. You finished with your questions, ma'am?
Yeah, Madam, I'm INS Fakir Chand. I have questions only pertaining to...
You can sit and ask. Please.
Thank you. My questions are pertaining to the budget, and I don't know what transpired between you and the industry people here. But you are
Please
now,
sit down.
You are in the software IT capital here, and you are aware that the previous government, like Nirmala government, other governments.
Just 1 minute. Which paper are you from?
No, I'm from INS News Agency. So the question is, successive governments in the past had given a lot of encouragement to the software industry, even to the extent of giving tax holidays on their revenues and the profits. And that led to, what all happened. It was a sunrise industry in the 90s. Subsequently, after that, then it was a great wave off. Now there's a new wave coming, the startup. There's an ecosystem. They have been asking, and they ask for also tax exemptions on the ESOP profits, on the ESOP, sorry. If that is given, that will lead to, trigger next revolution. That has not been addressed. That's what they have said to us.
All right. So your question is on the ESOPs? For the startups?
A tax holiday and ESOP for the startups.
Can I answer you?
Yeah, please.
We have given something for the ESOPs in the budget. We have given something on the ESOPs in the budget. All right?
That something is not related to this one, because this is this is something like what the tax holidays given to the profits for the software companies.
Wait a minute. You may talk the details you want. ESOPs we have mentioned in some particular detail in the budget. Even this morning during the consultation, quite a few representatives of startups were here. They've also said that they want something more or something differently. We've asked them to give a paper. We'll take it on board.
Okay. So, Madam, other question related to the budget is, you know, the savings rates have been falling down, and then now you have these exemptions coming, deductions happening, the new personal taxing, and then the banks and the post office also reducing the interest on savings. Savings is the thing that really makes the government, you know, for its capex and infrastructure projects. How are you going to, you know, encourage savings to increase savings rate? You know, it's been falling.
Do you want to say, Rajaram?
And you're not.
Or expenditure secretary?
The scheme that is brought out is an optional scheme where some people will choose to, those who prefer to save will continue to use the deductions that are available. There is no mandate that removes the deductions available on savings, number one. Number two, generally speaking, it is better to leave to individuals the choice of when to save and how to save, because there are individuals who don't need to save, such as senior citizens. The earlier regime discriminated against people who had no need for saving at a particular phase in their life. This gives them relief without affecting the incentive to save for those who need to save.
What about the interest? What about the interest on the savings? They have been falling. What is the protection you have as an interest?
Interest rate on savings is a market-led interest rate. However, a lot of small savings schemes exist whose rates are higher. They continue to exist, and there is also a scheme which has been in existence specifically for senior citizens in the banks as well as through the LIC. So specific protection for senior citizens is there and will continue.
Madam, PAN has...
Above that, 1 minute. Over and above that, in the budget itself, for senior citizens, we've given about 8,000 crores.
And
That's
lastly,
what
on
happened to
the telecom sector, I know it was already asked whether there is a threat of some companies shutting down. What are the steps the government is taking, and are you mulling any kind of relief for some of these?
I'll wait for the department to announce it.
Hi, ma'am. I'm Sharon from IANS News Agency. Ma'am, since exports have been falling from the past 6 months, what fiscal measures are you planning to take? Hi, ma'am. Since exports have been falling from the past 6 months, what fiscal measures are you planning to take to revive the exports?
I think we've had a whole section in the budget speech and also in my Lok Sabha reply on what are the ways in which we are trying to support exports. The MEIS is getting replaced by another scheme. There is a scheme called NIRVIC which is coming for export guarantee. Finance Secretary also has spent a lot of time looking at how we can work with the Commerce Ministry and identify sectors within the export which are high potential sectors for whom we can extend support. So there are several replies, all of which together would say about the specific measures we are taking to boost exports.
Ma'am, one more question. The capital expenditure for infrastructure projects is less than 1% of the GDP.
Just hold on. I'll come back to you because the lady started asking. I'll come back.
I'm Bisma Malik from New Indian Express. Just an extension of the question which she asked, that there's an ongoing tussle right now between the e-commerce companies and the traders, the Confederation of All India Trader Association. And in fact, the Karnataka High Court has stayed that investigation which was ordered into the alleged deep discounting and other preferential treatment to the sellers. So now the traders, we approached the traders, they said they'll take this up with you and with the Commerce Industry Ministry. And what is the government stand on this tussle? Because they are alleging there are gross violations of FDI norms by the e-commerce companies, whereas the e-commerce companies are saying we're giving a platform to the sellers. So where does the government stand on this, ma'am?
No, I think the Commerce Minister has spoken about it several times. And on this particular issue also he's spoken.
But
and
now the stay has been ordered on the investigation itself, on the government investigation. The Karnataka government has, the High Court has said that these violations need not be investigated. So what is your take on that, ma'am?
Can I respond?
Please.
The minister has spoken several times. The dispute or whatever between two groups which are happening, and he would want to look at it, he can always look at it. The court could have said, no, you don't do it, we'll do it. It's all right. The minister and the ministry are seized of the problem. Whichever way that is going to get resolved, since the ministry is seized of it, I would rather wait for the ministry to come out with something. It may not be proper for me to say, no, I know the minister is doing this, because the court and the ministry are both in their equal way, are actively engaged in this matter. And if the court has said something, we respect it. Right. Let's see how it moves forward. And
what about the 1% TDS rollout they've been seeking from you? You said you'll look into it, right? 1% TDS rollout. They want to roll back that 1% TDS, which was proposed in the finance bill on the e-commerce companies.
We've heard
TDS.
them. We've heard them. We've heard them.
Hello, madam. Ma'am, the capital expenditure for infrastructure projects is less than 1% of the GDP. Will the government go for more borrowings on this one?
Capital expenditure is not funded only through the government budget. The government budget is a catalyst for a lot of capital expenditure. Much of it occurs outside the budget. The real number to watch is the 1.02 lakh crores of national infrastructure pipeline, which consists of funding partly from the central government, partly from the state governments, and partly from private sources. This budget contains a specific provision to catalyze funding for the national infrastructure pipeline, which perhaps, I don't know if Mr. Rajaraman wants to add in.
Just to add some thought to it, when the sources of financing would be from the banks, the bond market is going to be one major source of financing. And we also expect foreign direct investment, and the foreign portfolio investors also invest substantially. And besides that, the finance minister has also announced 100% tax exemption for the sovereign wealth funds. So they will also contribute significantly to the participation. In fact, the activity of the foreign investors, especially in the brownfield assets, is quite significant, enabling the local developers of which are holding these brownfield assets to reinvest in greenfield projects as well.
And in addition to what has been stated, there is a specific provision in the budget which FM has made. That is an infusion of 22,000 crores equity into the two funds, that is NIF and IFCL. And that can be leveraged 8 to 9 times. So that again is an instrument which will provide equity and debt both for the infrastructure and would catalyze, as Secretary Expenditure has mentioned, the private industry.
One more thing which I would like to add is that the elimination of DDT is going to be a major positive effect on the global pension funds, which hold about nearly $40 trillion in assets. So they would be looking at India very favorably as part of the infrastructure pipeline.
Ma'am, in your interactions, I'm Aisha from DD News. Ma'am, in your previous interactions in other cities, you assured and also hinted that if required, you will tweak the budget, when necessary. Is there any area of common concerns that is emerging in these kind of interaction meetings, where the industry is expressing that this area should be prioritized and tweaked in the interest of economy?
No, everywhere there was a curiosity about the Vivad Se Vishwas. They wanted more clarification on that. That I'm sure in a day or two, the Department of Revenue will be able to give out some information, because the amendments post the cabinet approval. The bill for the Vivad Se Vishwas was submitted, tabled in the Lok Sabha. Post that, further amendments have been obtained, cabinet approval has been obtained, and that has also gone to the Lok Sabha Secretariat. Now the members will be notified about these amendments. Now, therefore, post that, since the matter will come on to the public domain, the department will issue the clarifications for everybody to know about it. So on that, a lot of questions, and we've said this only, that now that Parliament has also got it, kind of detailed explanation or clarification from the department will be released in a day or two.
Madam, this is I am Bal Subramaniam. I work for the Economic Times, Bengaluru. Last month, RBI put out a notice imposing a lot of restrictions on one cooperative, quite a few cooperative banks in Bengaluru, which has about 8 branches. So people seem to be losing faith in the cooperative banks, and a lot of people have been withdrawing their deposits and savings, SB savings. How soon can we expect some sort of a concrete action from Government of India?
Well, I think we've shown concrete actions in this budget by, first of all, increasing the deposit insurance, which has not been done for decades now, from 1 lakh to 5 lakhs. And the second is, we've also brought in a bill to amend the Banking Regulation Act to include cooperatives, so that from among cooperatives, not affecting anything else that they do, but if they go carrying the name of a bank, cooperative bank, such institutions from among the cooperative which use the word bank will now come under the Banking Regulation Act, and therefore will have to do all compliances like the way every other bank which receives deposits and lends money does. With that, we think there will be a greater regulation on cooperative banks, and therefore customers can also feel that they are being probably managed the same way as best practices of every other bank should be managed.
Ma'am, good afternoon. I'm Madhu from ANI. Ma'am, here, right in front of you. Ma'am, good afternoon. I just want to ask you, the Secretary, can you just elaborate? You said 20% to the state, and as far as the suburban rail is concerned, 20% will be given from the center and 20% share will be from the state, another 60% from other sources. When it comes to 60% from other sources, how it can be divided and how it can be paid back, that is the issue.
There is a typical pattern of financing of railway joint venture projects and metro rail projects, which is that approximately 40% is equity, of which half comes from the state and half comes from the center. The rest is typically taken as institutional loans, typically from external agencies such as the Asian Development Bank, JICA, and similar institutions, for which the central government provides a sovereign guarantee to that agency, saying that the central government will take responsibility for its repayment, but the cost of repayment falls on the special purpose vehicle which is founded to carry out the project. It's the same pattern as your BMRC or any of the typical metro rail undertakings and joint venture railway projects.
Ma'am, how much the government is worried about bringing down the inflation which is rising year by year as far as...
Sorry, can you please say it again?
No problem, ma'am. Ma'am, how government is very much keen about inflation rates as far as the rural inflation rate which is increasing. Another one is the projected 2020 growth for India. Are we very much realistic about the data or the statistics which we are getting?
Yes. I think this budget, if it has done something very significant, we have been absolutely realistic, both on the score of revenue generation and on the score of what we can spend or what we can borrow. So the figures, therefore, are absolutely realistic, keeping in mind the economy, and also that is why we were able to clearly give a glide path for having breached the fiscal deficit this time using the forbearance clause, the escape window. And that is why, because we are conscious that we have given a realistic picture, we were able to give a glide path figure of 3.5 for the next fiscal, the coming fiscal.